The morning sun of Nexus Prime cast long shadows across the crystal towers of the Galactic Council headquarters. Inside the main assembly hall, representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered for their weekly session. The air buzzed with different languages, clicks, whistles, and electronic sounds as various species communicated. At the center of it all sat Deho, the human ambassador. His warm brown eyes scanned the room with genuine kindness. When he smiled, which was often, it seemed, to light up the entire space. Other ambassadors naturally gravitated toward him, seeking his advice on everything from trade disputes to family problems. Ambassador Deho called out Zixtal, a tall blue creature with 4 arms. "My government is still fighting with the mining colonies on Kepler 7. Could you help us find a solution?" Deho nodded thoughtfully. "Of course, my friend. Let me speak with both sides. I'm sure we can find a way that makes everyone happy." This was typical. For 200 years, humans had been the galaxy's favorite problem solvers. When wars threatened to break out, human diplomats would step in. When trade routes got tangled up in politics, human mediators would smooth things over. When different species couldn't understand each other, humans would translate not just words, but feelings and intentions. The council leader, Veltar, was a being made of living crystal who changed colors based on mood. Right now, Veltar glowed a peaceful blue-green as he watched Deho work his magic on yet another dispute. "How do they do it?" Veltar wondered, aloud to his aide. "Every time I think we'll have a major conflict, the humans step in and somehow everyone walks away friends." Veltar remembered the Great Sector War of 2284. 3 powerful empires had been ready to destroy each other over mining rights. The fighting had already started when a small team of human negotiators arrived. Within 6 months, not only had the war ended, but all 3 empires had formed a trading partnership that made them richer than the mines ever could have. Down in the Cultural Exchange Wing, Hyojin was leading another of her famous workshops. Today's topic was Earth's philosophy of universal compassion. The room was packed with young aliens from dozens of species, all eager to learn about human wisdom. "The key," Hyojin explained in her gentle voice, "is to always look for what connects us rather than what divides us. Every being in the galaxy wants the same basic things: safety, happiness, and a chance to grow." A small reptilian student raised her claw. "But Teacher Hyojin, what if someone wants to hurt others? What if they like causing pain?" Hyojin's smile never wavered. "Even those beings are usually just afraid or hurt themselves. When we show them kindness and understanding, they often discover they don't really want to cause pain at all." The students nodded in amazement. Human wisdom always seemed so simple yet so profound. It was no wonder that Earth's philosophy had spread throughout the galaxy, making conflicts rarer and cooperation more common. In the historical archives, researchers often marveled at humanity's transformation. According to the records, humans had once been a violent species. Their early history was full of wars, conquest, and terrible weapons. But around 2087, something remarkable happened. Humanity achieved what their philosophers called the Great Awakening. Overnight, it seemed, humans laid down their weapons and embraced total pacifism. They dismantled their military, destroyed their weapons, and dedicated themselves completely to peace and understanding. It was the most dramatic change any species had ever made. "It gives me hope," Veltar often said in his speeches. "If humans could transform themselves so completely, perhaps any species can choose to be better." The transformation had been so complete that modern humans seemed almost fragile. They required special low-gravity environments on many worlds. Their submitted medical records showed they tired easily and had delicate bones. Human colonies were always small, peaceful farming communities that asked for protection from the Council's security forces. But their weakness in body was matched by incredible strength of spirit. Human counselors worked in hospitals across the galaxy, comforting the sick and dying. Human teachers ran schools that brought together children from warring species and taught them to be friends. Human artists created beautiful works that celebrated the diversity of galactic life. The most famous example was the Krenth Empire, The Krenth were known throughout the galaxy as brutal warriors who solved every problem with violence. Their empire had been built on conquest and fear. But when human diplomats first met the Krenth Emperor 50 years ago, something magical happened. Within a year, the Krenth had not only stopped their expansion but had actually started giving independence to their conquered worlds. The Emperor himself began studying human philosophy, and even established schools to teach Krenth children about compassion. The humans showed us that true strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down, the Emperor had said in a famous speech. We were like children playing with fire, thinking we were powerful. The humans taught us what real power looks like. Today felt like any other peaceful day in the galaxy. Deho was mediating a dispute between two trading partners who couldn't agree on shipping schedules. Hyjin was teaching a class of alien children how to resolve conflicts with hugs instead of hitting. Human colonies throughout the galaxy were quietly growing food, making art, and living in harmony with their alien neighbors. But then the emergency beacon started flashing. Veltar's crystal body shifted to a worried orange color as he received the priority message. It was from a remote monitoring station near the edge of known space. All council members to emergency session immediately, he announced over the intercom. Within minutes, the Great Hall filled with confused ambassadors. Emergency sessions were rare. The last one had been 3 years ago when a plague threatened to wipe out the Solarian species. Before that, it had been a decade. What's the situation? Asked Ambassador Kethra, a floating gas being who spoke through electronic patterns. Veltar's color deepened to a dark orange. We've received a distress signal from Survey Station 7 Alpha. They were monitoring the Outer Rim when they detected a pirate attack on a civilian transport. Several ambassadors made concerned noises. Piracy was uncommon these days, but it still happened in the lawless outer regions. The strange part, Veltar continued, is what happened next. The transport that was attacked, it was a human merchant vessel. This got everyone's attention. Human ships were usually given safe passage by even the most violent pirates. The criminals of the galaxy had learned long ago that attacking humans brought swift justice from the entire galactic community. It was like hurting a child in front of their parents. Were there casualties? Deho asked, his face full of concern. Do we need to send medical aid? Veltar's colors shifted to a confused yellow-green. That's just it. According to the monitoring station, the entire pirate fleet was disabled within 37 seconds of beginning their attack. The hall fell silent. Pirates in the Outer Rim weren't small operations. They usually traveled in groups of 5 to 10 heavily armed ships with experienced crews. Disabled how? Asked Ambassador Mortok, a large insectoid being whose people prided themselves on military knowledge. The report is unclear, Veltar admitted. Station 7 Alpha says their sensors detected some kind of energy discharge, and then all pirate ships stopped responding. The human vessel continued on its route without requesting assistance or even acknowledging the incident. Deho frowned thoughtfully. Perhaps another council security patrol happened to be in the area, or maybe the pirates' ships malfunctioned. But Mortok was shaking his large head. 37 seconds? For multiple ships to suffer complete system failure simultaneously? The odds are astronomical. There must be an explanation, Hyjin said, having just arrived from her classroom. Humans are peaceful. We don't even carry weapons on our ships. Maybe the pirates saw our identification and decided to leave us alone. Several ambassadors nodded at this reasonable explanation. It made sense. Even criminals had some limits. But Veltar was still that worried yellow-green color. I've requested a full report from Station 7 Alpha. We should have more details within a few hours. As the emergency session ended and ambassadors returned to their duties, most dismissed the incident. Pirate ships were old and unreliable. Simultaneous system failures, while unlikely, weren't impossible. And humans were the gentlest beings in the galaxy. There had to be a simple explanation. But deep in the Council's intelligence wing, a junior analyst named Jin Wu was reviewing the preliminary data from Station 7 Alpha. Something about the energy signatures bothered him. He had seen similar patterns before, but he couldn't remember where. Jinwoo pulled up the historical database and began searching. Energy discharges, disabled ships, 37-second time frames. Nothing matched exactly, but there were scattered reports over the years of similar incidents. Always in remote areas, always involving threats to human vessels or colonies, always with the same mysterious outcome. The threats simply vanished. Most interesting of all, every single incident had been classified as resolved with no follow-up. Investigation required. The reports were always filed by different council members, but they all had one thing in common. They recommended that the incidents be forgotten. 3 days had passed since the pirate incident, and Jinwoo had barely slept. His small office in the council's intelligence wing was now covered with data screens, reports, and empty coffee cups. What had started as curiosity about one strange incident had grown into something much bigger. The official report from Station 7 Alpha had arrived, and it raised more questions than it answered. The pirates' ships hadn't just been disabled, they had been surgically precise in their failure. Each vessel had lost power to weapons and engines while life support remained perfectly functional. No one was killed or even injured. The pirates were simply left floating in space, helpless but alive. This level of precision, Jinwoo muttered to himself, requires incredible technical skill and detailed knowledge of their ship systems. Even stranger when a council rescue ship arrived 6 hours later. They found the pirates in a state of confused terror. None of them could clearly remember what had happened. They kept talking about ghosts in the machines and voices that knew everything about them. But the most unsettling detail was that each pirate ship had received a data packet just before the shutdown. The packets contained complete dossiers on every crew member. Their real names, their families' locations, their financial records, even their childhood fears. The message was clear. We know everything about you. Don't try this again. Odo, could a peaceful human merchant ship have access to that kind of intelligence? And how could they deliver it with such technological precision? Jinwoo's investigation had led him down a rabbit hole of similar incidents spanning decades. There was the mysterious illness that struck the Vorth war fleet just as they were about to attack a human agricultural colony. The illness had symptoms that perfectly matched the Vorth species' rare genetic weakness, a weakness that wasn't even known to most Vorth themselves. Then there was the computer virus that crippled the Zelkran Empire's communication network during their planned invasion of the Kepler sector. The virus had been so sophisticated that Zelkran scientists still couldn't figure out how it worked. But it had shut down their military for just long enough for human diplomats to arrive and negotiate a peaceful solution. Every incident followed the same pattern, a threat to human interests, followed by the threat's sudden neutralization through means that seemed impossible for a peaceful, technologically simple species to accomplish. And always, human representatives would arrive shortly after to help everyone find a peaceful solution. Jinwoo was so absorbed in his research that he almost missed the soft knock on his office door. "Come in," he called without looking up. "Working late again, Jinwoo?" He turned to see Min-ho, the council's chief intelligence officer, standing in the doorway. Min-ho was an older man with kind eyes and a reputation for being one of the most thorough investigators in the galaxy. He was also, Jinwoo suddenly realized, one of the officers who had filed several of the resolved incident reports. "Sir, I was just reviewing some old cases," Jinwoo said carefully, "looking for patterns in criminal activity." Min-ho stepped into the office and glanced at the data screens. His expression didn't change, but Jinwoo noticed his eyes linger on specific reports. "Find anything interesting?" "Maybe. There seem to be a lot of incidents where threats to humans resolve themselves in unusual ways." "Unusual how?" Jinwoo chose his words carefully. "Very precise failures, almost like someone with detailed knowledge of enemy systems and capabilities was neutralizing threats surgically." Min-ho nodded slowly. "And what conclusion are you drawing from this pattern?" "I'm not sure yet, but it seems like either humans are incredibly lucky or..." Jinwoo trailed off. "Or they're not as helpless as they appear," Min-ho finished the thought. "Jinwoo, I want you to come with me. There are some people you need to meet." They walked through the council headquarters in silence. Instead of going to the main intelligence offices, Minho led Jinwoo to a section of the building he had never seen before. They passed through 3 security checkpoints, each requiring different biometric scans. Finally, they entered a conference room, where several people were already waiting. Jinwoo recognized some faces: senior analysts, military advisors, even a few ambassadors from non-human species. But there were others he didn't know, and their presence surprised him. "Jinwoo," Minho said, "welcome to the Anomaly Investigation Committee. We've been watching your research with great interest." A tall woman with silver hair stood up. "I'm So Young, head of the Xenobiology Department. We've been investigating the same patterns you've discovered, but from a different angle." She activated a holographic display showing human physiological data. According to official records, humans are physically fragile. Weak bones, low muscle density, poor reaction times. They require low-gravity environments and can't handle stress. The display changed to show new data. But our actual observations tell a different story. 3 months ago, I personally witnessed a human dock worker on Station Gamma 9 lift a cargo container that should have required mechanical assistance. The container weighed 800 kilograms. Another committee member, a reptilian being named Kesistar, leaned forward. "My people have been monitoring human colonies for decades. We've noticed inconsistencies. Human children play games that would seriously injure young from most other species. Human adults work in conditions that would be considered hazardous for species with supposedly superior physical capabilities." Jinwoo felt his world shifting. "Are you saying humans have been lying about their physical abilities?" "It's more complex than that," So Young replied. "They haven't exactly lied. When we test them in controlled laboratory conditions, humans do show the fragility indicated in their records. But in their natural environments, they demonstrate capabilities that don't match the lab results." Minho pulled up another display. "We've also been analyzing human communication networks. Their civilian systems use encryption that's supposedly beyond their technological capabilities, and we've detected data streams between human colonies that suggest a level of coordination that isn't reflected in their official governmental structure." A chill ran down Jinwoo's spine. "How long has this been going on?" "We've been gathering evidence for 5 years," Minho said. "But the patterns go back to humanity's first contact with the galactic community. Every major conflict of the past 2 centuries has ended not through human mediation, as the official records state, but through the convenient collapse of the aggressive parties." Kesitar activated another display showing galactic conflict statistics. "Look at this timeline. The Zerion Wars ended when the Zerion leadership suffered a plague that affected only their ruling caste. The Malthera invasion stopped when their war fleet experienced equipment failures that left them stranded. The Vorth expansion halted when their emperor had a spiritual awakening that made him embrace pacifism. In every case, So Young added, human representatives arrived shortly after to help establish lasting peace. They always had exactly the right cultural knowledge, the perfect diplomatic approach, and solutions that seemed almost too good to be true." Jinwoo stared at the data, his mind racing. "You're suggesting that humans have been secretly neutralizing threats and then posing as peacemakers?" "We're not suggesting anything yet," Minho said carefully. "We're gathering evidence. But the pattern is clear. Humanity has been far more involved in galactic politics than they've admitted, and their methods are far more sophisticated than their public image suggests." The committee showed Jinwoo evidence that painted a picture of humanity as master manipulators, operating on a scale that boggled the mind. Trade routes that happened to favor human allies. Scientific discoveries that coincidentally gave humans economic advantages. Political movements that always seemed to align with human interests. "The most disturbing part," Kesitar said, "is how good they are at it. If we hadn't been specifically looking for patterns, we never would have noticed. They've created a galactic civilization that's more peaceful and prosperous than any in recorded history, but they've done it through methods that are far from the simple kindness they're known for." So Young pulled up one final display. 3 weeks ago, We detected an energy signature near the human colony on New Terra. It lasted for exactly 0.003 seconds, but the frequency pattern was identical to advanced military technology that officially doesn't exist. What kind of technology? Jin Woo asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. The kind that could disable multiple starships simultaneously in 37 seconds, Minho replied. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If the committee was right, then humanity wasn't the galaxy's beloved peacekeepers. They were its secret guardians, using methods that would terrify every other species if they knew the truth. What do we do with this information? Jin Woo finally asked. We keep investigating, Minho said. But carefully. If humans really are what we think they are, then they're already aware of our investigation. The question is, what will they do about it? As if in answer to his question, Jin Woo's communication device chimed. He had received a message from Ambassador Daeho's office. The ambassador requests a meeting with you tomorrow morning to discuss your recent research into galactic security patterns. Jin Woo barely slept that night. His meeting with Ambassador Daeho was scheduled for 9 a.m., and he spent the early morning hours wondering if he was walking into a trap. But his curiosity was stronger than his fear, and at 8:45, he found himself standing outside the human embassy wing of the council headquarters. The human embassy was exactly what one would expect: warm lighting, comfortable furniture, and walls covered with artwork celebrating galactic diversity and peace. Daeho greeted him with his characteristic warm smile, but Jin Woo noticed something different. The ambassador's eyes seemed more alert, more focused than usual. Jin Woo, thank you for coming. Please sit down. Would you like some tea? It's a blend from Earth, very calming. Jin Woo accepted the tea and waited. He had decided to let Daeho lead the conversation. I understand you've been researching some interesting patterns in galactic security, Daeho said, settling into his chair. Your work has been quite thorough. You've been monitoring my research? Daeho's smile never wavered. We monitor all research that touches on human activities. It's a matter of security, not ours, but everyone else's. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Jin Woo felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean by that? I think you already know, Daeho replied. You've discovered that things aren't quite what they seem. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Before Jin Woo could respond, his communication device chimed. It was an urgent message from Boram, one of the committee members he had met the night before. She was leading a covert observation mission to a human farming colony on Kepler 442b. I'm sorry, Jin Woo said to Daeho. This might be important. Daeho nodded graciously. Of course, take your time. Jin Woo opened the message and felt his blood run cold. Boram's report was brief but shocking. Everything we thought about humans is wrong. You need to see this. Sending full data package now. The data package contained video recordings from the farming colony that defied everything the galaxy knew about human capabilities. Jin Woo watched in amazement as human children, some who looked no older than 10, casually lifted farming equipment that should have required industrial machinery. In one video, a human child picked up a fallen tree that must have weighed several tons and moved it out of the way as if it were a simple branch. In another, adult humans worked continuously for over 20 hours in conditions that would exhaust most species within 2 hours. Interesting footage, Daeho commented, looking over Jin Woo's shoulder. Jin Woo nearly dropped his device. You can see this? Boram is very skilled at her job, but human colonies have excellent security systems. We've been aware of her mission since she arrived. The implications hit Jin Woo like a physical blow. You've been watching the Watchers. We always have, Daeho said simply. It's necessary for maintaining the stability everyone enjoys. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other committee members were making their own disturbing discoveries. Taejun, who was monitoring human communications, had managed to crack a small portion of their internal networks. What he found there made him question everything he thought he knew about galactic politics. The human communication networks weren't just more advanced than advertised. They were operating on a level that suggested technological capabilities centuries ahead of what humans officially possessed. Military-grade encryption was just the beginning. The networks contained vast databases of information about every species in the galaxy, detailed biological data, psychological profiles, cultural weaknesses, and military capabilities. More disturbing were the internal communications themselves. Taijun intercepted fragments of conversations that mentioned containment protocols and acceptable casualty parameters. One message discussed Phase 7 implementation for something called the Vorth situation, a reference that made Taijun's blood run cold when he realized it was dated 3 days before the Vorth Empire's mysterious decision to abandon their expansion plans. In another part of the galaxy, Yunha was investigating what humans called nature preserves on several worlds. These were supposedly protected areas where humans studied alien ecosystems and promoted conservation. But Yunha's surveillance revealed something far different. The nature preserves were actually massive training facilities. Yunha watched in horrified fascination as humans practiced combat scenarios against holographic representations of every major species in the galaxy. The scenarios were brutally efficient, targeting specific weaknesses that most species didn't even know they had. She recorded one exercise where humans practiced disabling Zelkran communication networks, the exact same networks that had mysteriously failed during the Zelkran Empire's attempted invasion years earlier. Another exercise showed humans practicing psychological warfare techniques against Krenth warriors, exploiting cultural pressures and honor codes with devastating precision. But the most chilling discovery came from Hyun-Soo, the committee's historian. He had been researching the correlation between human diplomatic successes and the mysterious problems that befell aggressive civilizations. What he found was a pattern, so precise it couldn't possibly be coincidence. Every major galactic conflict of the past 200 years had ended, not through human mediation, but through carefully orchestrated disasters that struck the aggressive parties at exactly the right moment. The diseases that struck war fleets were always perfectly tailored to the biological weaknesses of the specific species. The equipment failures always happened to military systems while leaving civilian infrastructure intact. The internal rebellions always promoted leaders who were mysteriously friendly to human interests. It's not just that they've been manipulating galactic politics, Hyun-Soo realized with growing horror. They've been engineering the entire course of galactic civilization for 2 centuries. Back in Daeho's office, Jin Woo was struggling to process what he was learning. How is this possible? Humans are supposed to be peaceful. You've built your entire reputation on kindness and nonviolence. Daeho's smile finally faded, replaced by an expression of patient seriousness. We are peaceful, Jin Woo, but peace isn't the same thing as helplessness, and kindness isn't the same thing as weakness. But the records show that humans gave up warfare completely. You dismantled your military, destroyed your weapons. We evolved beyond primitive warfare, Daeho corrected. We didn't give up the ability to defend ourselves and our friends. We just became much better at it. Jin Woo's communication device chimed again. This time it was a message from the council's emergency session. Veltar was calling all senior staff for an urgent meeting. The subject line was ominous. Critical security briefing. Human relations. I should go, Jin Woo said, standing up. Yes, you should, Daeho agreed. But Jin Woo, before you leave, I want you to think about something. The galaxy has enjoyed 2 centuries of unprecedented peace and prosperity. Crime is at historic lows. Wars between major powers have virtually disappeared. Species that were once mortal enemies now work together on scientific and cultural projects. Children grow up expecting cooperation instead of conflict. Daeho stood and walked to his window, looking out at the diverse crowd of beings moving through the council plaza. Is this not the galaxy you want to live in? Is this not the future you want for all species? Yes, but then ask yourself this question. Does it matter how we achieved this peace as long as it's real and lasting? Jin Woo left the embassy with his mind reeling. In the emergency session, the committee members shared their findings with the senior council leadership. The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying. Humanity wasn't the galaxy's beloved peacekeepers. They were its secret rulers, manipulating events on a scale that boggled the imagination. Veltar's crystalline form shifted through a spectrum of colors as he processed the information. Orange worry, red alarm, purple confusion, and finally a deep blue that indicated profound thought. If this is true, Veltar said finally, then we need to decide what we're going to do about it. The question is, are we dealing with benevolent guardians or dangerous manipulators? Does it matter? Asked Kessitar. If they have this level of power and have been using it secretly for 2 centuries, then we've never really been in control of our own destiny. But look at the results, So Young pointed out. Every manipulation has led to increased peace and prosperity. They've prevented wars, stopped genocides, and created the most stable galactic civilization in recorded history. By making us all puppets, Mortok said angrily. We thought we were making our own choices, but they've been pulling the strings all along. The debate continued for hours, but it was interrupted by a priority communication from the human embassy. Deho was requesting a private meeting with the council leadership. His message was simple but ominous. It's time for a more honest conversation about humanity's role in galactic affairs. As the emergency session ended, the council members realized they were facing an impossible situation. If their suspicions were correct, then humanity possessed power beyond anything they had imagined. But that power had been used to create the most peaceful and prosperous era in galactic history. The question that haunted them all was simple. Now that they knew the truth, what would humanity do to keep? The day the council realized Earth had been playing kind. Part 4. The council's emergency meeting chamber had never felt smaller. Veltar sat at the head of the crystalline table, his body cycling through nervous color patterns as he waited for the human delegation to arrive. Around him, the galaxy's most powerful leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jin Wu stood against the wall with the other intelligence officers, his mind still reeling from the past week's discoveries. The evidence was overwhelming. Humanity had been secretly manipulating galactic politics for 2 centuries. But the most unsettling part wasn't what they had done. It was how perfectly they had done it. The chamber doors opened with a soft hiss, and Deho entered, followed by 2 other humans Jin Wu didn't recognize. But something was different about all 3 of them. Gone were the warm smiles and gentle demeanors. They moved with a confidence that seemed almost predatory, and their eyes held an alertness that hadn't been there before. Council members, Deho said, his voice carrying an authority that made several ambassadors flinch. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I believe it's time we had an honest conversation. Veltar's colors shifted to a cautious yellow. Ambassador Deho, we've uncovered some disturbing evidence about human activities throughout the galaxy. We need explanations. Yes, you do, Deho agreed. But first, allow me to introduce my colleagues. This is Su Jin, who has been coordinating our intelligence operations for the past 30 years. And this is Jamin, who speaks for Earth's actual government. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Earth's actual government? Jinwoo felt his stomach drop as he realized that even the human political structure they thought they knew was a facade. Su-Jin stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice carried no trace of the gentle warmth that characterized human diplomats. For 2 centuries, you have believed that humanity underwent a great spiritual awakening that transformed us from a violent species into peaceful mediators. This belief has been carefully maintained because it served everyone's interests. Carefully? Maintained? Mortok's mandibles clicked angrily. You mean it was a lie? Not a lie, Jamin corrected. An oversimplification. Humanity did transform itself, but not in the way you think. We didn't abandon violence, we perfected it. We didn't become weak. We became so strong that showing our strength became unnecessary. Veltar's form flashed bright red. The pirate incident, the equipment failures, the diseases that struck war fleets, that was all you? Deho nodded calmly. Every single intervention was designed to maintain galactic stability while preserving life. We could have simply destroyed any threats to peace, but that would have created fear and resentment. Instead, we chose to make aggression seem futile while offering better alternatives. Sujin activated a holographic display that showed a complex network of connections spanning the galaxy. This is the actual structure of galactic politics. Every trade route, every alliance, every scientific breakthrough has been guided to create maximum benefit for all species while preventing the conflicts that destroyed previous galactic civilizations. Jinwoo stared at the display in horrified fascination. The network was incredibly complex, with thousands of subtle influences and interventions that had shaped the course of galactic history. Humanity hadn't just been manipulating events. They had been orchestrating the entire symphony of galactic civilization. But why? Kestar demanded. Why go to such elaborate lengths to hide your capabilities? Jamin's expression became almost sad. Because fear destroys everything good that sentient beings can create together. If you had known our true capabilities from the beginning, you would have either tried to destroy us or submitted to us completely. Neither outcome would have created the thriving galactic community you enjoy today. So you made yourselves appear weak and harmless, Veltar said, his colors shifting to a confused purple. We made ourselves appear as what you needed us to be, Deho corrected. When species needed mediators, we became diplomats. When they needed teachers, we became philosophers. When they needed protection from threats they couldn't handle, we became that protection, invisibly. Sujin pulled up another display showing detailed psychological profiles of every species in the galaxy. Human psychology differs fundamentally from yours in one key way. We see cooperation as a form of strength, not weakness. Every intervention we've made has been designed to encourage species to work together rather than against each other. The Krenth Empire, Mortak said suddenly. Their emperor's spiritual awakening. That was your doing too? The Krenth were heading toward a war that would have destroyed billions of lives, Jamin explained. Their emperor was the intelligent being trapped by cultural expectations of violence. We simply provided him with information and perspectives that allowed him to choose a different path. Information like what? Jinwoo found himself asking. Sujin smiled, and for the first time, there was genuine warmth in it. We showed him the mathematics of conquest versus cooperation. We demonstrated that the resources his people were spending on war could make them 10 times wealthier if invested in trade and technology. We gave him cultural examples from dozens of species who had found strength through peace. And when logic wasn't enough, Deho added, we arranged for him to meet Krenth children who had been raised in human schools, learning cooperation instead of aggression. He saw what his people could become, and he chose that future. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy through force. They had transformed it through manipulation so subtle and beneficial that their targets had thanked them for it. Every miracle of galactic cooperation, Veltar said slowly. Every sudden outbreak of peace. Every fortunate coincidence that prevented disaster. Carefully planned and executed by the finest strategic minds humanity has ever produced. Sujin confirmed. We have teams of analysts who study every species, every culture, every individual leader. We predict problems decades before they occur and engineer solutions that make everyone feel like winners. The Zelkran invasion, Kessatar said. Their communication networks failed at exactly the right moment. The Zelkran leadership was planning a war that would have set back galactic development by centuries, Jamin explained. We disabled their ability to coordinate the attack, then provided them with economic opportunities that made war seem pointless by comparison. How many of us are actually making our own decisions? Mortak asked, his voice hollow. All of you, Deho said firmly. We don't control minds or force choices. We simply ensure that the information you have access to leads naturally toward beneficial decisions. Every choice your species have made has been genuinely yours. We just made sure that peaceful, cooperative choices were always the most attractive. Options available. Jinwoo felt like the universe was reshaping itself around him. The human colonies we observed, the children lifting massive weights, your true physical capabilities. Humans evolved on a high-gravity world with an environment that required extraordinary physical and mental adaptability, Sujin explained. Our fragility is an act we maintain in controlled situations. In reality, the average human child is stronger than most adult members of your species. But we're not just physically superior, Jamin added. Our real advantage is psychological. Humans are incredibly good at understanding and predicting the behavior of other intelligent species. We see patterns where others see chaos, and we're excellent at finding win-win solutions to apparently impossible problems. Veltar's colors shifted through a complex pattern that indicated deep thought. If you're so powerful, why maintain the charade at all? Why not simply rule openly? Because ruling through fear creates resentment, rebellion, and eventual collapse, Daeho explained. Every galactic empire in history has followed the same pattern: expansion, overextension, internal conflicts, and destruction. We learned from those failures. Instead of ruling, Sujin added, we became gardeners. We created conditions where every species could flourish while preventing any single group from becoming a threat to the others. The result, Jamin concluded, is the most peaceful and prosperous era in galactic history. Crime is at historic lows because we've addressed the root causes of criminal behavior. Wars between major powers are almost unknown because we've made cooperation more profitable than conflict. Scientific advancement has accelerated because we've encouraged knowledge sharing instead of competition. The chamber remained silent as the council members absorbed this information. Finally, Veltar spoke, his colors now a deep, thoughtful blue. What happens now? Now that we know the truth? Daeho looked around the chamber, meeting each ambassador's eyes in turn. That depends on what you choose to do with this knowledge. We can continue as we have with greater transparency between us, or... He paused, letting the implications hang in the air. Or? Kessatar prompted. Or we can step back and let the galaxy return to its natural state, Sujin said quietly. Without our interventions, species will begin competing more aggressively for resources. Old resentments will resurface. The careful balance we've maintained will collapse. Are you threatening us? Mortok demanded. No, Jamin said sadly. We're offering you a choice. The galaxy has become. The council chambers had never been so quiet. For 3 days, the galaxy's leaders had debated behind closed doors, while the rest of galactic civilization continued their daily lives, unaware that everything they believed about their peaceful existence was being questioned. Jinwoo sat in the observation gallery, watching Veltar's crystalline form cycle through color patterns that reflected the mood of the entire chamber. The crystal being had spent hours in deep blue contemplation, flashes of red anxiety, and occasional bursts of yellow uncertainty. The evidence was undeniable. Humanity had been secretly managing galactic civilization for 2 centuries, preventing wars, encouraging cooperation, and eliminating threats before they could destabilize the peace everyone enjoyed. But knowing the truth and deciding what to do about it were very different things. The question before us, Veltar announced to the assembled council, is not whether humanity has been manipulating galactic affairs. The evidence is clear that they have. The question is whether we can accept this reality. Mortok, the insectoid military strategist, clicked his mandibles nervously. Accept it? They've been treating us like children. Every decision we thought we made independently was guided by their invisible hand. But look at the results, Kestar argued. My species was involved in constant warfare before human contact. Now we're part of the most successful scientific collaboration in galactic history. Our people are healthier, wealthier, and happier than they've ever been. Because they made us that way, Mortok shot back. We're living in a zoo and they're the zookeepers. The debate had been going in circles for days. Some council members were angry about the deception. Others were grateful for the results. A few were simply terrified of what might happen if humanity decided to withdraw their protection. The chamber doors opened, and Daeho entered with his delegation. But this time they were joined by additional humans that Jinwoo didn't recognize. The new arrivals carried themselves with a quiet confidence that suggested they rarely appeared in public. "Council members," Daeho said, "we've come to offer you complete transparency. Meet Dong-hyun, coordinator of human military operations, and Nari, head of our strategic planning division." Dong-hyun was a tall man with calm eyes that seemed to see everything. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "We understand that our revelation has caused confusion and concern. We're here to answer any questions you might have about our operations." Veltar's colors shifted to a cautious orange. "How extensive are your capabilities? What could you do if you chose to act directly instead of through manipulation?" "Every space-capable civilization in the galaxy could be disabled within 72 hours, Dong-hyun replied matter-of-factly. "We could shut down all interstellar communications, disable every military vessel, and control all major shipping lanes simultaneously." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The casual way he stated these capabilities was more terrifying than any threat could have been. "But," Nari added quickly, "we've never wanted to rule through fear. Our goal has always been to create conditions where every species can thrive according to their own nature, while maintaining galactic stability." "Why should we trust you?" Mortak demanded. "If you have this much power, what's to stop you from deciding that some species aren't worth preserving?" Daeho answered. And for the first time since the revelations began, his warm smile returned. "Because we genuinely like diversity, Mortak. A galaxy with only humans would be incredibly boring. Every species brings unique perspectives and capabilities that make the whole greater than its parts." "Consider the Zelkron mathematical innovations," Nari said. "Human mathematics would never have developed the equations that made faster-than-light communication possible. The Krenth understanding of metallurgy has revolutionized construction throughout the galaxy. Kessitar's people have biological insights that have eliminated dozens of diseases. Every species has gifts that benefit everyone," Dong-hyun added. "Our role isn't to replace you or control you. It's to create an environment where all those gifts can flourish." Jinwoo found himself raising his hand. "But what about free will? If you're always guiding our choices, are we really making decisions or just following a script you've written?" Nari looked at him with genuine respect. "That's the most important question anyone has asked. The answer is that we don't control choices. We control the context in which choices are made. Every decision is still yours, but we try to ensure that cooperative choices are always more attractive than destructive ones. For example," Daeho explained, "when the Vorth Empire was planning their expansion, we didn't force them to stop. Instead, we provided them with information about mineral-rich asteroids in unclaimed space, and introduced them to trading partners who could provide everything they needed without conquest. They chose cooperation because it was clearly better than war." "But what if they had chosen war anyway?" Kessitar asked. Dong-hyun's expression became serious. "Then we would have intervened more directly, but in 2 centuries, it's rarely come to that. Most intelligent beings choose peace when it's genuinely more beneficial than conflict." Veltar pulsed with deep blue light. "What you're describing sounds almost too good to be true. There must be failures. There must be times when your manipulations didn't work." The human delegation exchanged glances, and Nari nodded slowly. "There have been 17 interventions where our subtle approach failed and we had to take direct action. In each case, we faced threats that couldn't be reasoned with or redirected." "What kind of threats?" Mortak asked. "Species that were fundamentally committed to destruction," Dong-hyun explained. "Civilizations that derived pleasure from causing suffering, or that had become so rigid in their thinking that they couldn't adapt to changing circumstances. What happened to them?" The question came from Veltar, whose colors had shifted to an ominous red. "They no longer exist as threats to galactic stability," Nari said quietly. "But their populations were preserved and relocated to isolated systems where they could pursue their preferred way of life without harming others." The implications hung heavy in the air. Humanity didn't just guide galactic civilization. They acted as its immune system, removing threats that couldn't be reformed or redirected. So we're faced with a choice, Veltar said finally. Accept your guardianship openly, or face the possibility of being classified as a threat if we resist. No, Deho said firmly. That's not the choice at all. If you decide you want us to withdraw, we will. But you need to understand the consequences. Nari activated a holographic display showing complex predictive models. Without our interventions, galactic civilization would likely collapse within 50 to 70 years. Old rivalries would resurface, resources would become sources of conflict, rather than cooperation, and the current era of peace would end. But, Donghyun added, that might be what you want. Some species might prefer the excitement and challenge of competition, even if it means less overall prosperity and security. The choice is genuinely yours, Deho concluded. We can continue our current arrangement with full transparency. You would know about our interventions and could even request specific actions. Or we can withdraw completely and let galactic civilization develop naturally. Jinwoo looked around the chamber at the faces of beings from dozens of species, all struggling with the same impossible decision. Accept that their peaceful, prosperous galaxy was the result of manipulation, or risk losing everything they had built together. After hours of debate, Veltar called for a preliminary vote. The question was simple. Should the Council formally acknowledge humanity's role as galactic guardians and request that they continue their work openly? The vote was not even close. 47 species voted to formalize the arrangement. Only 3 voted for human withdrawal, and even they admitted it was more about principle than practical considerations. The motion passes. Veltar announced, his crystalline form now glowing with a steady, peaceful blue. Humanity's guardianship of galactic civilization is hereby recognized and officially requested to continue. But the real surprise came when Wu Jin, who had been introduced as humanity's new official liaison, presented the Council with a detailed proposal for the future. Instead of simply continuing their secret manipulation, humans wanted to establish formal institutions for galactic management. We propose creating joint human-alien committees for conflict prevention, resource allocation, and technological development, Wu Jin explained. Our experience in managing these issues would be combined with your species' perspectives and expertise. You want to share power? Mortok asked suspiciously. We want to share responsibility, Wu Jin corrected. Managing galactic civilization is an enormous task, and we've always intended for other species to eventually take on larger roles. This revelation simply accelerates that timeline. The new arrangement would be revolutionary. Instead of secret manipulation, there would be transparent cooperation. Instead of wondering why conflicts always resolve themselves peacefully, species would be part of the conflict resolution process. Instead of accidentally stumbling into prosperity, they would actively build it together. As the session ended and delegations began returning to their home,